Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to this Township of Cavan Monaghan regular council meeting on this February 6th, 2023 at 12:59 p.m. We'll call the meeting to order. I'll start with the land acknowledgement. We respectfully acknowledge that the Township of Cavan Monaghan is located on the Treaty 20 Mississauga territory in the traditional territory of the Mississauga Anishinaabe people. We offer our gratitude to First Nations for their care for and teachings about these lands. May we honor these teachings. I look now to council for an approval of the agenda before us today. Moved by Deputy Mayor Huntley, seconded by Councillor Natchoff. All in favor? That is approved. Any disclosures of pecuniary interest or the general nature thereof? Seeing none. There is no closed session, and our first item of business today is a presentation from Jeanette Levy-Smith from Orca. Welcome, Jeanette.
Thank you, Your Worship and Council. I'm very happy to be here this afternoon. You have lovely chambers, and so this is my first time here as the new CAO. I arrived in July of last year, following the retirement of our former CAO. So I have a bit of a presentation to go through, and then I'm sure if there's some questions, I'm happy to answer any of them I can at the end. This presentation was an opportunity to call it a little bit of a roadshow, if you will. We're going out to all of our member municipalities, and I can say we're at least 1/3 through them now, which is great. And sort of trying to also tailor a little bit to each of our member municipalities. Next slide, please. There we go. So I always start off the presentation by introducing our board chair, which you are very familiar with. He was re-elected just on about 2 weeks ago in terms of our AGM. So happy to have him back in the same chair. And for me, there's a little bit of continuity there as well. So it's good for our board and myself. Next slide, please. And these are our board of directors that have now been appointed since the October municipal election. And as you can see, because of the Conservation Act, there are, based on population, there are councillors, 3 from the City of Peterborough, 2 from the Township of Selwyn, and then 1 representative from each of our other member municipalities. And again, that's following the Conservation Act in terms of our representation. So 8 member municipalities, 11 board members. Next slide, please. And just a picture of our watershed that we have. And it's good to always remind ourselves of how large, sorry, I'm gonna go back to the next slide if it could. Maybe because it's a PDF of a slide deck. Thank you. So it's always good to get a bit of a map and a picture of how big our watershed actually is. It is actually it's the 17th largest watershed that we manage in the province, or is in the province. And then just really wanting to point out that we have over 10,000 hectares of land that Orca manages directly. And that population number continues to grow as each of our municipalities are growing. Next slide, please. This is our current vision and mission statement. It is from our current strategic plan that we have. And it is something that the current board will be looking at in their term. It was on the work plan, if you will. However, things got a little busy during COVID. So the board of the day hit pause on it and wanted to, we'll be revisiting this in the coming months. What I can say is that it is still very relevant. Our mission, our vision, our goals are still very relevant, and we operate and manage ourselves as an organization, a public entity, with this in mind. Next slide. So a few highlights for 2022. And so again, you can kind of see where we've been busy. It's been an upward trend in our planning and permit program that we have. It's been steadily climbing, and I included the numbers that we processed here in Cavan Monaghan in there. We also do participate in the Trails Advisory Committee, and I know that there might be even some more staff that have expressed an interest in participating in that, so that's great. And we also did participate very closely with the school and Trouts Unlimited here as well. So delivered some programs at the schools, and then also in conjunction with Trouts Unlimited. We also completed some floodplain mapping in 2022, and we're doing 2 more projects in 2023, which is also great, one of which we have a grant for. And we also have our risk management agreements with Cavan Monaghan, and through that with the Clean Water Act and the responsibilities that fall under that. And finally, I just take an opportunity to highlight our climate change strategy. That has an internal component to it, but also an external component to it. And this is going to be our first 2 full years of implementing that strategy. So we're really looking to move the bar a bit more on that piece of work. But what we have done in the last little while is integrate our pieces, which has actually been very helpful from a management perspective. So next slide, please. And I always take an opportunity to highlight some of our work that we completed in 2022. So Otonabee Conservation received a significant amount of FedDev grants in 2022, actually over $1 million for 4 projects. One of those projects was the rehabilitation work on Jackson Creek Trail. And we raised over $61,000 in the community for that as our component to that work. We're very proud of that. It does speak to how important that trail is in terms of a community asset. But we also are now in the process of completing 3 washroom projects in our conservation areas as well. So a lot of capital work through the injection of that grant. In terms of things. So, next slide, please. And also this slide speaks to just some things that are really about us in terms of meeting our directive from the province around budget and accountability and transparency. And so one is that the board has approved the 2023 performance objectives, and that we're also looking to create a sort of a website dashboard kind of a component to that. But those objectives are reported on quarterly. They're throughout the entire programs that we have. And there are a number of, well, we report on them quarterly, but those objectives were also aligned to our budget process as well. So it was really helpful to understand the service level, and how we wanted to monitor ourselves to ensure that we're an effective organization. And we also combined that with a quarterly report in terms of things. And then the last is that we actually do also meet our permitting timelines. So the province had, just a little bit more on that one, the province had set out timelines for all conservation authorities in terms of reporting out on our planning and permitting programs and our stats. Otonabee took up that challenge and started reporting those out earlier than what was mandatory from the province. And we're continuing to refine our reporting systems. We've also added our enforcement to that as well. So our next step is actually to provide that information to each of our member municipalities on a quarterly basis as well. So that information right now goes to the board, but now we want to sort of share that out wider and send that information out to our member municipalities. And for us, again, a little bit of context, the board approved a 2.4% increase, which for us on our whole budget is approximately a little over $30,000. Next slide, please. And this is the apportionment. So that's a new term that the province is also putting out. We might call it still our tax levy, which is what it's been known as for many years. But the new term is called apportionment, and it actually will start to play out a little bit more into our 2024 budget in terms of things as well. So we break it out into our operating and capital. And this is our total budget that we have. So we have about a $3.2 million operating budget, which is made up of the apportionment, tax levy, our fees, and our self-generated revenues. A little bit of provincial grant, not much, but 91,000 is what we get from the province, and then other agreements in terms of things. And the last slide, I think, is just, so in order, one of our objectives was to keep that tax levy low, or as low as possible. So staff had just proposed a modest capital budget, also realizing that we're finishing our FedDev grants, and so our capacity as an organization to be able to do things. So it's a modest capital budget. There's no special levies this year for anything across the system. And in order to achieve that 2.4 tax increase. And this is a slide that just shows all of our member municipalities and the breakout that we have. And that modified CVA is what each conservation authority receives from the province. And so my last slide. So we started, again, happy to have Deputy Mayor Huntley in the board chair position. And we've now had our AGM and we've started our board orientations. And so you're also welcome if you care to join us. We started our first one with governance and legislation, and our next one is at our board meeting. We've timed them right before our board meetings to make it just a little easier for people to participate and not to conflict with other municipal schedules. So our next one is just in 2 weeks around our programs and services. So I'm happy to answer any questions that people might have, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Janet. Thank you for that presentation. Members of council, questions for Janet? Councillor Byrne.
Through you, Chair, just quick curiosity. On all those trees that you're planting, is there any cooperation or overlap that you do with the province and the townships as far as planting trees along the roadsides to not need snow fences and stuff like that if they're appropriately designed?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. So I do know that we do a lot of cooperation and a lot of problem solving around each of the sites and around the volunteers with the province, so MTO, and also our member municipalities. So in the last few years, we haven't had any challenges with those plantings. I do know that in some of our larger municipalities, there's an opportunity to help educate some of the other departments around it. So, for example, some staff in the municipalities understand we're planting, and then we've had, we've had incidences where another department goes out and mows those trees and seedlings down. So we've had to go out to replant. So what we have been doing is spending a lot of time working with the larger municipalities around communication internally so that the left hand and the right hand sort of know what's going on. But we haven't had any conflicts at all with the MTO.
Thank you. Other questions? Deputy Mayor Huntley.
Through you, Chair, to Jeanette, thank you very, very much for the presentation coming out today. I know you'd much rather talk about tree planting, but one of the slides you flashed up about the categories, and I don't think for the sake of this council, maybe you could explain how the province has laid out the categories of our budget, and just for further explanation.
Absolutely. And I do like to talk about tree planting. It's one of our very popular programs. So if you're interested, we're looking for sites. Yes. So a little bit onto the categories. There isn't a whole slide that speaks to the categories, but it was in 2021 when the province had dictated or had come out with some new legislation around programs and inventory, is what they titled it, transition plans, programs and inventory. And so each conservation authority was asked to look at what is our mandatory programs and services that we are providing that meets the legislation framework. That would be called a category 1. And a category 2 would be something where the conservation authority enters into an agreement to provide a service. So an example would be our campgrounds that we have. Otonabee Conservation has 2 campground agreements, Beavermead in Peterborough and Lakefield in Selwyn. And a category 3, which is programs and services that the board deems important and to provide. So for us, it is our tree planting program. It is also our our land stewardship and our climate change strategy implementation. So it's really focusing on bringing some transparency to all conservation authorities across Ontario around what is a category 1, mandatory, category 2, which is agreements that we may enter into, and category 3 is those other services and programs. And our next step in our budget process would be to clearly line that out a little bit more around what is the tax levy paying for, which is really category 1 and category 3, not category 2.
Thank you. Councillor Natchoff.
Thank you, Chair. To Mrs. Levy-Smith. Just a kind of clarification, if you could just tell me the difference between what an application and what a permit is. Thank you.
Thank you. So the application is under a planning application that we would receive. A permit, if you really want to think about it, is from our regulatory role that we have under Section 28. Mostly is what we would do. So while our role might change in the planning side, in particular, we might talk about Bill 23 in that regard, conservation authorities still have a responsibility to issue permits, Section 28, with respect to that. So sometimes, often, both of these processes will happen. Advice and guidance will be given for both of these so that the applicant understands what the planning process would be, but then also what permits they might need down the road.
Deputy Mayor Huntley.
Through you, Chair, just to, would you mind elaborating a little bit on what Section 28 means to this council as well? Thank you.
Sorry, my apologies. So Section 28 really applies to the regulatory responsibilities that all conservation authorities have, and it's specifically focused on hazards. So giving permits to applicants to develop in a certain lands that might have conditions attached to that. And mostly it all focuses on hazards, water, hydrology, wetlands, those sorts of things. Otonabee Conservation has not provided natural heritage comments like some other conservation authorities have for some time. That would be like the butternut tree or the bobolink bird, those sorts of things. Those would be those always have been a provincial responsibility. Some conservation authorities took that on as an added comment through that process. Did I thoroughly confuse everybody? I'm sorry if I did.
Not at all. Thank you for that clarity. Other questions? Seeing none, thank you very much, Danette. It was very helpful. Nice to meet you, and congratulations, Deputy Mayor Huntley, on being reappointed as the chair. And with that, we will move on and look for a motion to receive the presentation from Ms. Levy-Smith, Deputy Mayor Huntley, and Councillor Natchoff. All in favor? That is approved. Thanks again very much. Yeah, absolutely. So with that, we have a public meeting as our next order of business today. So I'll look for a resolution from council to open the public meeting. Councillor Byrne and Councillor Edgerton, all in favor? That is moved. So the public meeting is now, and we'll turn the mic to Miss Ellis. Miss Ellis, thank you.
Thank you, Mayor Graham, members of council, members of the public, press, and staff. Today's public meeting is about proposed official plan and zoning bylaw amendment applications for an existing lot of record at 461 Highway 7A in the former Cavan Ward. It's at the corner of Highway 7A and Tapley Quarter Line. This property is an existing lot of record. It's developed with a single detached dwelling with an attached garage and is serviced with private well and septic systems. Access to the property is currently from Highway 7A. The owners of the property approached the township last year inquiring about the ability to create a new residential lot at the south end of the property. The property is currently designated rural in the township's official plan. Consents to or severances to create a new non-farm residential lot in the rural designation is not currently permitted in our official plan. As such, their request for a severance, township staff could not support. An alternative for the owners of the property was to apply for an official plan amendment to change the policy framework that would permit the consideration of one new lot. The owners of the property decided to pursue that direction and applied to the township for an official plan amendment and the related zoning bylaw amendment. The official plan amendment, as proposed, will include a special policy that will apply to the subject property only. That official plan amendment will add a policy that will permit the creation of one new non-farm residential lot by consent. The description applies to the subject property only. The associated zoning bylaw amendment will rezone the property from the rural residential zone to the rural residential exception 28 zone. All of the standard regulations of the rural residential zone will continue to apply. The only exception will be that the minimum lot area requirement will be 3,000 square meters. In a normal rural residential zone, that lot area requirement is 4,000 square meters. Just to give you a little reference though, 3,000 square meters is the standard minimum lot area requirement in a hamlet residential zone. A severance application has also been filed to actually create the new lot. That consent application has not been processed by township staff to date because we need the official plan amendment policy change in effect before we could support a severance application. As required by the Planning Act, notice of this application was circulated by first-class prepaid mail to all assessed persons within 120 meters of the subject lands, to all required ministries and agencies, and to all township staff, management staff, sorry. A sign was also posted on the Highway 7A frontage and the Tapley Quarter Line frontage. So in staff's opinion, we have met the Planning Act requirements for the circulation of this application. Through the circulation, township staff have received no comments or questions from any member of the public. Township staff have indicated that they have no objections to the applications. We have received written comments from a number of agencies. Peterborough Public Health has indicated that they have no objection to the applications. They will require inspection of the severed and retained lots through the consent process. Enbridge Gas has no objection to the applications. Ministry of Transportation has no concerns with the applications, but has indicated that they'll need to review a complete site plan to ensure that all appropriate setbacks are complied with before they issue their building and land use permit. And they've obviously indicated to Peterborough County Land Division that there will be conditions attached to the severance application. Through pre-consultation on these applications, the Ministry of Transportation did indicate that a new entrance for a severed lot could not be permitted on the Tapley Quarter Line because there was not enough lot frontage. Over time, the existing access to the property on Highway 7A will have to be removed, whether that's through development activity or through highway work. So that access would have to move to Tapley Quarter Line. So with this proposal, there is the proposal for a mutual driveway. And Carly, if you could flip down to attachment number 2 to the report, you can see the location of that proposed mutual entrance. Oh, back with the, yeah. So you can see through this sketch where the proposed lot line will be, and the area identified in yellow is a proposed easement to provide access to the existing house on the property, and then there will be a new driveway for the proposed lot. This is a requirement of MTO, even though they didn't address it in their comments about the official plan amendment and zoning bylaw amendment, they have indicated that as part of the pre-consultation process. Autonomy Conservation has also provided written comments for the township's consideration. In their comments, they've indicated that there is insufficient information at this time to demonstrate consistency with section 3.1 of the provincial policy statement and sections 4.2.3 and 4.2.4 of the growth plan. As such, at this time, we are unable to recommend approval of the application. However, we are aware that the Conservation Authority staff have been in contact with the authors of the environmental impact study, and ORCA staff are expecting the receipt of a revised environmental impact study to address the outstanding requirements. And just this morning, I know that I received, and I believe ORCA staff received, a revised environmental impact study. So I'm expecting that that documentation will be reviewed, and we will be coming back to council with a recommendation as soon as possible. So given the fact that we are unable to assert consistency with the PPS and the growth plan and the township's official plan, the recommendation before you today is that we receive and review all public comment that we get at today's public meeting, and that the draft OPA and zoning bylaw amendment applications be presented to council with a recommendation at a future date.
Thank you, Ms. Ellis. So just to reiterate that, so we're just receiving this for any comments, and staff will be coming back at a future date with a more formal and a final summation of the realities of what's being requested in the ZBA with regards to the property. Questions, members of council? Okay, Deputy Mayor Huntley.
Through you, Chair, I guess I'm quite befuddled by the MTO requirement for this mutual driveway. Are they saying that they plan on stopping the existing driveway on the Highway 7 in the future, or is like, what's the logic behind that? And I've never come across this before.
Through you, Mayor Graham, to Councillor Huntley and members of council. I'm not going to pretend to speak for MTO, but I can tell you what I understand to be the reason behind their request. It's always been the position of the Ministry of Transportation that when access is available from a local road to a lot, access comes from the local road. They are trying to get away from direct access to a provincial highway. So in this particular case, we have an existing access to the lot. So the Ministry of Transportation has indicated through the pre-consultation process that through any development activity, which a severance and a planning application is considered development activity, that existing entrance would have to be relocated to the Tapley Quarter Line. Or that access would be relocated at the time the Ministry of Transportation does any kind of road improvement to that area of Highway 7A. MTO also has requirements that that entrance has to be a certain distance away from the intersection. That's why it has to be pushed to the south of the lot. And there was not enough room to accommodate two separate entrances with that distance requirement. So that is why a mutual access is being proposed at this point in time. And I believe that the Director of Public Works has indicated that the township accepts that in this location.
Thank you, Ms. Ellis. Other questions, members of council? Seeing none. With that, I guess we can transition to the point 8.4 for comments from members of the public. Any members of the public willing to speak to the report before us today? Going once, going twice. Sold. Very well. So staff at 8.5, we consideration of the report. As staff have mentioned, this is going to be coming back to us with a more formal official plan amendment and zoning bylaw amendment at a future date. So all we're looking for right now is to receive the report and any comments that we have not really received other than Deputy Mayor Huntley's at this time. So without any other adjustments, we look for a mover of that, Deputy Mayor Huntley, Councillor Byrne, all in favor? That is carried. Thank you very much, staff. With that, we need a resolution to close the public meeting. Deputy Mayor Huntley, Councillor Natchoff, all in favor? That is closed. Thank you very much, everyone. Then we move to 9.1 on the agenda, which is the minutes of the regular council meeting held January 16th, 2023. I believe Ms. Page has a few minor amendments she would like to speak to.
Through you, Mayor, to the rest of the members of council, we would like to amend the minutes of the regular council meeting of January 16th, 2023 to include at the end of the confirming in the regular bylaws be read a first, second, third time, signed by the mayor and clerk, and the corporation attached thereto.
Thank you, Ms. Page. Just a formality. Can I ask for a mover to approve the minutes as amended? Councillor Byrne, Councillor Natchoff, all in favor? That is approved. Moving on to 10.1, the minutes from the Committee on Boards, Municipal Revitalization and Heritage Advisory Committee. Looking for a motion to approve those minutes from the September 29th meeting. Deputy Mayor Huntley, Councillor Edgerton, all in favor? That is approved. For 10.2 and 10.3, I believe we can do them both in one motion. So a motion to receive those two sets of minutes. Councillor Natchoff and Councillor Byrne, all in Deputy Mayor Huntley, do you have a question?
Through you, Chair, are we approving these or receiving? Maybe we can sorry, say that slower. Yeah. Okay, why did we receive them all?
Through you, Mayor, to Deputy Mayor Huntley. So ultimately, the advisory committees, we adopt those, and the like the library board, your BIA, your boards that are not an advisory committee, we just receive those for information. We don't, council doesn't have the ability to change really any of the motions that have been taken at the library board and your BIA. Generally speaking, I don't want to say ever because there are some situations, but that's why we just receive these for information.
Thank you, Ms. Page. The motion on the floor. Motion, call for the vote. That is carried. Very good. Thank you very much. Now we move on to the report section of the agenda, 11.1. Mr. Connolly.
Through your worship to the council, you have before you Planning, Economic and Building Report PEB 2023-05, which is the year-end and fourth quarter activity report, Planning, Economic Development and Building, with the recommendation that council receive report PEB 2023-05, year-end and fourth quarter activity report, Planning, Economic Development and Building for information. I think previously I had sort of given outlines of these reports, but unless council has some questions, I'll just let that stand.
Thank you, Mr. Connolly. Questions, members of council? Seeing none, thank you for that update. Seems as though things are still moving quite well, even though we've seen a little bit of a dip, but probably due to the cost of lumber and materials. So thank you, Mr. Connolly. Motion of council to receive that report. Councillor Natchoff and Deputy Mayor Huntley, all in favor? That is approved. Next report is Report Public Works 2023-01. Mr. Hancock.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Through you to council, recommendation before you on Public Works Report 2023-01 is that council receive this report on environmental services as information. Just a couple of comments for council. In this report, it is our intention to reopen the reuse center. That's been a request of a number of residents over a period of time, and I think we recognize due to COVID we had closed that reuse center, so we are reopening it. We will try and qualify and quantify the materials in there by signage to make sure that the materials are of good reuse value and certainly not of something that's going to create a problem in the reuse center area. Our date of reopening is April 1st, 2023. That's to allow us time to get the stored equipment out of that area that we have in there. We have a culvert steamer and some pieces of equipment stored there, so we will have those moved and to make room, and allows us to get the signage and whatnot put up. We've indicated in this report that We are in the budget, we had included, I think, some materials for redoing the outside of the transfer station. It's in need of some, we call it rebuffing, I guess, and it was our intent. It was our intent to utilize some of our public works staff to do that work, which I think is a good point. It shows staff interest, and we have some money included in 2023 operating budget for the purchase of materials. So that is noted in the report. In the report also is a couple of notes on the status of waste collection. I think we mentioned previously that the county is in the process of putting together the terms of reference for hiring a consultant for the review of waste collection. That terms of reference, as my understanding, is to come to county council and the waste committee in the near future. We have seen the terms of reference and have provided comments. With that, there is also to be a review of the kitchen waste program, because we have no direction from the county on that yet, other than what we do in Millbrook ourselves at this point in time. And thirdly is the recycling activity, and we've talked about the transition of the Blue Box program. We are meeting with the county and the private operators of that system. The date is intended to be early part of March. We have not met yet, and we're not quite sure, other than there was a report to county council that said county staff would not be operating that system. That's as much as we know at this time. So this is the intent of this report is information primarily on the reuse center, but it's trying to keep council aware of the changes that are occurring in the waste management industry. So we're trying our best, because it's an ever evolving situation out there. And I think the Blue Box program, the dates are to start in 2024, and the transition is to be completed by 2026. So it's important that everyone understands what that transition will look like and who will operate it, because that's going to be a piece of the puzzle here going forward. So those are my comments on this report at this time.
Thank you, Mr. Hancock, for that summary. Questions, members of council? Councillor Byrne.
Through you, Chair. Not really a question so much as a statement I'd like to make. I don't think the feeling I have from most of the residents that I represent, that they're overly worried about spending a lot of money making the old cabin Kmart look pretty. I don't know if there's some stipulations by the government that says you have some minimum things. And I have all kinds of questions at some time in the future about all that recycling stuff, but I don't see the township representatives or the residents themselves being impressed by spending money there when they're being kind of handicapped in other places.
Thank you, Councillor Byrne. Questions, other members of council? Seeing none. Thanks for that, Wayne. I know it's been widely discussed about the reuse center, so that's good news. And it's nice to hear that our own staff are going to be doing the work rather than hiring someone out, paying a premium for that service. So that's excellent. So thanks for that. With that, there's just receiving this report before us today. Members of council, moved by Councillor Natchoff, seconded by Councillor Byrne. All in favor? That is approved. Thank you, Mr. Hancock. Our last report is the Corporate Services Procedural Bylaw Update. Ms. Page, over to you.
Thank you, Mayor Graham. Through you to yourself and the rest of the members of council. Before you is Corporate Services Report 2023-02, and the recommendation is that council adopt bylaw number 2023-08, being a bylaw to govern the calling, place, and proceedings of meetings. As council will see in the report, the majority of the updates were administrative changes. If you have any questions, please feel free.
Thank you, Ms. Page. Important document that kind of guides everything that we do as a township and how we do it. Questions, members of council? Seeing none, thank you very much, Ms. Page. Look for a mover and a seconder to receive the report and accept the recommendations. Councillor Byrne and Councillor Edgerton, all in favor? That is approved. We have this next portion is with regards to committee verbal reports. I'm not sure exactly if everyone's had a committee meeting yet, but if anyone has and wants to provide a summation report, this is the time, so you can put your hand up and let us know. I'll go first to get things kicked off. We did have a special library budget meeting that was called a few weeks ago. So we've had two in the last 3 weeks, I guess it is now. So, and that helped inform the update to council. And that was a really well conducted meeting. And I think we're all going to continue to move forward in that regard. That's my only meeting that we've had as a committee of council thus far. Any other councillors had a committee meeting you'd like to provide an update on? Councillor Edgerton?
On September the 20th.
Get down here.
September the 29th, we had a heritage meeting, and a gentleman that looks after the bylaws, went over the bylaws and everything. So that will be coming back to council when he gets that straightened out.
Thank you, Councillor Edgerton. Deputy Mayor Huntley.
Through you, Chair, I actually haven't participated in any committee meetings at this point, but I did want to point out that the CAO and I did attend the Hiawatha swearing in for their new council. It was an honor to be there and to witness. It was fantastic. I think we could take some pointers and adopt them for our swearing in ceremonies, and really look forward to continuing to build our relationship with Hiawatha as we go forward.
Thank you, and thank you both to you both, yourself and Yvette, for attending and representing the municipality at that event. I'm sure it was as spectacular as you've described it. So with that, we'll look for a motion to receive those committee reports. Councillor Natchoff and Deputy Mayor Huntley, all in favor? That is approved. I don't have any general business at this time. There's no correspondence for information or correspondence for action. So with that, we'll move on to the bylaws. Bylaw number 2023-08 being a bylaw to govern the calling, place, and proceedings of meetings, otherwise known as the procedural bylaw, be read a first, second, and third time and passed this day of February 6th, 2023, signed by the mayor and the clerk, and the corporate seal attached thereto. Moved by Councillor Byrne and Councillor Natchoff, all in favor? That is approved. There is no unfinished business. Any notices of motion? Seeing none, we'll move on to the confirming bylaw, which is bylaw number 2023-09, being a bylaw to confirm the proceedings of the meeting held this February 6, 2023, be read a first, second, and third time and passed this February 6, 2023, signed by the mayor and the clerk, and the corporate seal attached thereto. Moved by Deputy Mayor Huntley and Councillor Natchoff, all in favor? That is approved. Lastly, we'll move on to our adjournment motion to adjourn the meeting. Councillor Natchoff and Councillor Edgerton, all in favor? That is approved. There's a number of upcoming events and meetings. On the February 9th, 2023, there's a downtown BIA Board of Management meeting. There's our next regular council meeting, which is the final budget meeting on February 22nd, 2023 at 1 p.m. The Valley Trails Advisory Committee is meeting on Monday, February 27th. And the regular council meeting is also coming up for Monday, March 6th, 2023, and then again later in March on March 20th. And that is it for the day. Thank you very much, everyone, for attending. Enjoy the rest of the week. Deputy Mayor Huntley.
Just a slight correction. I think you said the budget meeting was the 22nd. I think it's the 21st. Just for clarity.
My apologies. Correct. It is February 21st. So mark your calendars appropriately. Very good. Thanks, everyone. Have a good day.